In August 1977, a single envelope shattered the peace of Circleville, Ohio. Inside was no ordinary letter, but the first message from someone who would terrorize an entire community. Mary Gillespie, a local school bus driver, trembled as she read the accusation that she was having an affair with the town superintendent. At the bottom, an ominous signature, the Circleville writer. No one could have imagined how this first letter would ignite a decades-long nightmare that would leave permanent scars on this quiet, Midwestern town. Circleville was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone. Children played freely in front yards, doors remained unlocked at night, and neighbors readily borrowed cups of sugar from one another. But behind this Norman Rockwell facade, someone was watching. Someone was seething. Someone was ready to tear the community apart, one letter at a time. The letters didn't stop with that first message. Each new envelope delivered another dose of malice, revealing intimate details only someone close could know. They targeted Mary, her husband Ron, even reaching their young daughter. The handwriting was distinctive, bold, aggressive strokes that seemed to scream from the page. The writer described Mary's daily routines with unnerving precision. The route she drove her bus, the clothes she wore, conversations she'd had in private. "I see you," one letter taunted. "I'm always watching." Fear began to spread through the Gillespie household like poison. Mary would check over her shoulder constantly, scanning faces in crowds, wondering if the writer was nearby, observing. She began to question everyone. Friends, co-workers, even family members. Who could hate her enough to do this? The accusations about the affair with the superintendent were particularly devastating in a small conservative community where reputations were everything and gossip spread faster than truth. Then came the escalation no one saw coming. On a crisp autumn day, Ron Gillespie was driving his usual route when he spotted something unusual, a sign nailed to a tree calling him a liar and a cheat. The sign contained the same vicious accusations that had filled the anonymous letters. Furious, he pulled over and tore it down. When he opened his trunk to dispose of it, the unthinkable happened. A booby trap triggered. A gunshot echoed across the quiet countryside. Ron Gillespie fell to the ground, dead. A husband, a father, a community member, gone in an instant. The scene that greeted investigators was puzzling. Ron's car was still running. The sign lay beside him. The gun that had fired the fatal shot was rigged in the trunk with fishing line, a crude but effective trap. The official investigation ruled it an accident, suggesting Ron had forgotten about a loaded gun in his trunk. But Mary knew the truth. The Circleville writer had claimed their first victim, and they were far from finished. The letters continued to arrive with alarming frequency, now bearing an even more sinister tone. "You're next," one letter warned Mary. "Sleep with one eye open," instructed another. "Your children aren't safe," threatened a third. Mary began sleeping with a baseball bat beside her bed. She installed new locks, bought a guard dog, but there was no escaping the writer's reach. Each trip to the mailbox became an exercise in terror. The town's sense of safety crumbled as neighbors eyed each other with suspicion. At the local diner, conversations would halt mid-sentence when strangers entered. In church pews, people would whisper theories about who might be behind the letters. The writer could be anyone, a friend, a colleague, the person standing behind you in line at the grocery store. Circleville had become a community under siege, not from an outside force, but from within, the most terrifying kind of threat. Local law enforcement seemed overwhelmed by the case. They interviewed dozens of people, collected handwriting samples, and monitored the post office. But the letters kept coming. Some were postmarked from Columbus, others from Cincinnati, suggesting the writer was mobile or had accomplices. Whoever was behind this had resources, time, and an unwavering commitment to their twisted campaign. 6 years passed before investigators made their arrest. Paul Freshour, Mary's own brother-in-law, was taken into custody in 1983. The evidence seemed damning. A gun in his possession matched the weapon that killed Ron, and handwriting analysis linked him to the venomous letters. Investigators suggested a motive of jealousy and bitterness toward the Gillespie family. Paul vehemently denied any involvement, but few believed him. He was convicted and imprisoned. Case closed, except it wasn't. Something inexplicable happened that continues to baffle crime researchers to this day. The letters continued to arrive in mailboxes across Circleville, while Paul Freshour sat locked behind bars. Even the prison warden received one. "I know you've got the wrong man," it read. "How was this possible? Had they imprisoned an innocent man? Or was Paul orchestrating this campaign of terror from his cell, perhaps working with an accomplice on the outside? Prison officials conducted thorough searches of Paul's cell. They monitored his mail and his visitors. They found nothing. No evidence that he was continuing the letter campaign. Yet the letters persisted, with the same handwriting, the same intimate knowledge of the community, the same malice. It was as if the Circleville writer was taunting not just Mary and the townspeople, but the entire justice system. By the early 1990s, the letters mysteriously stopped. No explanation, no final message, no confession. They simply ceased, leaving a community traumatized and full of unanswered questions. Paul Freshour was eventually released from prison, but lived the remainder of his life under the shadow of suspicion. He maintained his innocence until his death, insisting he had been framed by the real Circleville writer. Decades later, the identity of the Circleville writer remains one of America's most perplexing unsolved crimes. Theories abound. Some believe it was indeed Paul Freshour, who somehow managed to continue his campaign from prison. Others suspect Mary herself, suggesting she wrote the letters to cover up an actual affair. Still others point to various townspeople who had grudges against the Gillespies. Internet sleuths continue to analyze the case, poring over scanned copies of the letters, searching for clues that might have been missed. What makes this case so disturbing is not just its unsolved nature, but what it reveals about human nature and community trust. A faceless predator who held an entire town hostage with nothing but paper, ink, and intimate knowledge. The writer knew their victims' routines, their relationships, their deepest secrets. They exploited the close-knit nature of small-town life, turning its greatest strength, familiarity, into its greatest weakness. Which raises the most disturbing question of all. How well do you really know the people in your life? The neighbor who waves hello each morning, the colleague who sits across from you, even family members who share your name. Any one of them could be harboring dark secrets, just like the Circleville writer. Behind every friendly smile might lurk resentment, jealousy, or rage. The boundary between ordinary citizen and malevolent tormentor might be thinner than we care to admit. The Circleville letters remain a chilling reminder that sometimes the most dangerous threats aren't strangers lurking in the dark, but the familiar faces we see every day. In a small town where everyone knows your name, the person who wishes you harm might know it best of all. The Circleville Letters, a mystery that remains unsolved.